Unfiltered, uncensored, and unapologetic. This is the Retail Warzone Podcast.
Tonight we have Debra with us again, who was with us last week. She took part of the event today in Boston, correct?
Yeah.
So this isn't going to be a whole lot of like in-depth stuff. We just kind of want to go over, we got some pictures and things like that and some videos to share. Also, too, Jana had sent me all the media links that she had in the description of the video. All the press links are there for you to go visit. Some of them have some of the pictures that you'll see. Some of them have different takes on the story. Debra sent me a video just a few minutes ago, actually, that I've got pumped in here. And I think what we'll do is we'll start with the Kroger video first, and then we'll kind of go through the pictures and everything. So let me know, guys, in the chat or Hero, if you want to shoot me a text, if you do not hear the audio on this, but it should be fine.
New at 11, the family of a Loveland man says management at a Milford Kroger drove their son to commit suicide. They say their son was bullied and humiliated on the job, and now his parents are seeking a jury trial on multiple claims against the grocery store giant. WCPO 9 News reporter Whitney Miller is following the case.
This 29-page lawsuit outlines what the family says is dangerous and disturbing conduct by two managers at that Milford location. They say their son's cries for help were ultimately ignored.
His job to Kroger was his identity. It was everything to him.
Attorney Austin LaPuma is describing 40-year-old Evan Seyfried, a Loveland man and a 19-year employee of Kroger.
He'd rose up the ranks, worked hard, reported every day.
But things changed during the pandemic. According to the Seyfried family attorney, Evan was reportedly bullied by two managers at the Milford store. In the lawsuit filed Monday, LaPuma claims the bullying began when Evan wanted to wear a mask per CDC and Kroger guidelines.
Because of his refusals to comply with, quite frankly, dangerous conduct, they then targeted him with just, as I mentioned, completely indescribable behavior.
The suit claims Evan was, quote, tortured for months by his superiors, who allegedly slashed and destroyed products in the section Evan maintained. According to the filing, Evan reached out to the company's helpline. His family says those complaints went largely ignored. In March, Evan took his own life. His family says because of the bullying he endured while at work.
That Evan had any issues with mental illness, no history of any issues whatsoever, and every single complaint that led up to that fateful day was solely attributable to those garish stories and conduct from that location.
A 2019 study shows that more than 90% of employees have been bullied while on the job.
Hold Kroger accountable! Hold Kroger accountable!
We honor the life of Evan. We fight for those that are still here with us. I want to thank you for your courage and your bravery coming out today to make sure that we continue to press on. For those who are suffering in silence right now, who feel like they don't have any other hope, you all make all the difference.
Wow. Pretty impactful stuff, obviously. That was Cincinnati local. Was that correct, ABC?
I believe so. They're I'm not sure which affiliate the WCPO is.
I will say that I was extremely pleased with the amount of press coverage that Jana was able to muster, to be honest with you, because, the media has been pretty silent on all of this. And, she sent me this like bullet list of different publications that were covering it and whatnot. And like I said, I didn't know about that video until you sent it to me just a few minutes ago. So, I mean, at least it got something. And I would think that the press release really had a lot to do with that to get that ball rolling, which is excellent. So having said that, but, it's an impactful day. Now, I know, you were at one. I know the one in Cincinnati, Oregon, Rhode Island, Michigan. What about it? There was one in Arizona too, correct?
As far as I know, yeah, we were just sort of like collecting what we could today. And I didn't realize as I was watching that some of the, like even the scrambling, some of the titles didn't come through. But yeah, there's some locations that we just haven't gotten photos on yet. So yeah, in that video I was only able to include like a handful of locations, but
yeah, because I know Jana had messaged me because I told her I'd gotten some of the pictures from Michigan and sent those to her because she said the ABC was wanting to get everything they could, at that moment in time, which was excellent because that's progress. Because I mean, it takes a lot of voices, and you guys discussed this last week as far as awareness goes. There were a lot of voices behind this, and it finally got a little bit of shine on it, after a year. And unfortunately, today is the year anniversary. But, it's a shame that it took this, to get it a little bit more exposure than what it's gotten. Now, yeah, I've got pictures here. Some of these were actually in that video. And this is like a slideshow showing the different locations and whatnot that I was able to put together, before we got on stream, because this stuff started hitting around, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I'm trying to patch together everything I can for tonight, but show you what we got.
Yeah.
So this was from the first thing that Jana sent me. This was actually from a local publication. It was like a photo gallery of the different things that were going on. These actually have, like some wording to them. You've got Jana Murphy embraces Joe Elam as Amy Chamberlain, the late Evan Seyfried girlfriend, stands behind them during a protest held against Kroger for late employee Evan. And it pretty much says the same thing all in, all the descriptions. But, it just shows you, I mean, that people do care, and people, showed up for this. And, that's an amazing thing. And, what everybody did to organize this, to get the participation that they did, is pretty amazing, because this covered quite a few states. And there were a lot, obviously from Cincinnati. But you can see, it's people showed up. People wanted to participate. People believed in the cause. People, agree that Kroger has to be held accountable for what happened. And then here's some more. Once again, you see Amy in the bottom right. And then you've got the group picture. You can see Jana and you can see Amy side by side. But yeah, I mean, it's impactful stuff. I mean, voices do matter, guys. And I had this one in the middle at Cincinnati. That's actually Vermont, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I didn't even realize
yes.
This was a Vermont one.
And we know this lady, along with this one, standing side by side in the group picture. One thing that you guys did that I really did enjoy, there you are, Debra.
That was it.
Where you guys held the different pieces for justice for Evan.
Yeah, Vicky did a lot of work, like prepping signs for us, and we had, where each person held a sign, and then just like different poses. We did a lot of photo shoots today just to get some stuff that we could use for publicity. But yeah, I mean, I have to say our day started out with Vicky telling us that this was in USA Today, which was a huge like piece of news for us. And then we had just, people who came out who, have only met online or, who like have been affiliated with this cause for months or years. And I just met for the first time today. We had almost 20 people in Massachusetts, which was great, for like being in the middle of the day, and started snowing later. So we were really happy. We also had, which was in the footage that you showed, but the state senator who introduced one of the pieces of legislation around this came out and talked to us and thanked us and talked about just how impactful it is for like our group of people to keep making noise and people feeling like, we had some people drive like over an hour, one person over 2 hours to be there because they felt like not doing something. They came by themselves. But they said like just the thought of not doing something was what made them actually take action and get in their car and take that leap of faith or just put themselves out there in an uncomfortable situation and be a voice for Evan. So
what kind of interest did you guys get, like passerbys and whatnot? Were there people that actually asked, hey, what are you guys doing? And actually expressing some interest, why are all these people standing on the State House steps?
We were a little set back from like there's kind of a big space in between like the sidewalk and like the stairs that we were on. But there was like constant traffic going on, people looking, seeing what was happening. So we didn't get many people asking us, but we definitely got that like exposure for anyone driving by.
Every bit helps. So that was great. Eric, Evan's brother, is quite active on Twitter, and and he made sure to express his thanks for the family, for everything that everybody's done, and it is kind of amazing to watch. And you make a good point about people that you only met on the internet that felt compelled to be there and to do something, and that says a lot. I mean, it does. Maybe it's not the turnout everybody wanted. Everybody would love for it to have been bigger, but it's kind of like anything else. If one person gets something out of it, it's worth it. If that's just another voice to add. And I cannot stress enough, everybody's voice is important. Everybody matters. And, the fact that this happened to Evan, it really shows. Obviously Kroger doesn't think everybody matters, because if they did, we wouldn't be doing any of this.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about while we were there was just the amount of shame and fear that go along with this. If you're targeted, there's the shame of being a target, even though as being if you're a worker, which is what a lot of targets are, there shouldn't be shame involved with that. But people, do think that being abused carries some connotation of weakness, and people feel shame when they experience this, and then there's also that fear of putting yourself out there, and how is this going to affect my ex, or just being associated with the issue can be a scary thing for people. So we recognize that, and the courage that it takes to come out and just basically be a voice for the people behind them who can't come out, or who feel too scared, or feel too much shame. every person I feel like who comes out and speaks up about this issue is giving permission to other people to come out and speak out, and it'll just take momentum, like issues of prior decades have that had stigma around them, and so we're just chipping away at this slowly, and I was there were 15 locations around the country that had some form of, at least that I was inspired by.
The one thing about all of this that is as heartwarming and impressive as anything is it does show you the amount of people that have supported this cause and whatnot. There's still good people left in this world. And you see the evidence of that with people, who raise the flag for, these kind of causes. And it's important, that we understand that for as twisted and messed up as society can be, there's a lot of good folk out there that are just wanting to see the right things done, and see people being done right by, their employers, being treated with respect, the whole dignity at work. I mean, it's all that goes together, and, it's a symptom of a bigger problem, industry wide, that we have things like this happen. And, the one thing that the awareness can do is maybe hopefully get us toward instituting change in these organizations. And, the biggest part of all this is, the mental health aspect is so important, that, this should wake people up. And, the fact that Kroger has been completely silent on this and, hasn't reached out to family, the union, not reaching out to the family, so many failures across the board in an industry who really, these businesses succeed on the abuse they put on their employees. And that's just not right. I mean, it doesn't need to be that way. You don't go take a job to be treated like garbage. You go to take a job to make some money, to be treated with respect, to be treated as a human being, not a number. And unfortunately, what we see is far too often, it's all about the money. It's like you said last week, it's all about the power, the people in power. They could care less as long as their coffers are full, So Hero just said, advocate accountability. Yes. And that's the thing, hold Kroger accountable. But not only Kroger, all businesses. They all need to be held accountable for the well-being of their staffs, period.
Yeah. One thing I find interesting about this whole thing is that, as I've experienced toxic environments, really seeing how, like in a bullying situation or even escalating to a mobbing situation, you really get a sense of like how, especially in a mobbing situation, how the person or the people in power control the narrative. And I think that these protests are taking that to this like a grand scale of like, here's Kroger's narrative of just wanting to avoid liability and pretending this didn't happen, but there's this huge problem that they didn't address, and it's just the power in taking back that narrative and in like having a voice and saying, no, that story isn't correct. This is our truth. This is what we know to have happened. And support Evan, who, wasn't able to have a voice in his situation or didn't have his voice respected. It's just so powerful to change that narrative, or to try to change that narrative, to chip away at it and say, this is actually what's happening, and this is what needs to be addressed.
Yeah, because really and truly what happens with the power is they steal your voice.
Yeah.
It's punitive silence. It's, It's all, and the one thing that really kills me too is, there'll be people that say, well, I hate the whole, well, just toughen up kind of thing, and I feel like that's a terrible way to look at it, when people are being bullied, because not everybody's wired the same. Everybody's different. Sure, you may have some people with thick skin that it don't bother, but then you have people that it does. And, the stigma of, people being portrayed as weak, because really at the core of it, they just don't want to be treated like that. It has nothing to do with being weak. It has everything to do with, I'm a human being. I don't deserve to be treated that way. And you nail it, with the whole power thing, because that's really all it is these puppet masters in corporate offices, leading their peons around to make them money. And if they lose one, it's like, okay, we'll just get another one, throw them through the grinder. And that's really how most employees are looked at in most of these businesses, regardless of whatever kind of garbage that the company wants to talk about. Oh, we're a family here and whatnot. No, you're not. So, I mean, it's pretty, it's rough out there. A lot of people don't understand, especially all these groups of people that talk about, oh, it's a low skill job or this or that. People don't understand how much stress and pressure goes along with a customer facing business.
Yeah.
And the whole customer is always right kind of stuff, once again, enforces the fact that they see their employees in most cases as lesser, because they won't even take up for them.
Yeah, it's all about like reinforcing this hierarchy that keeps them in power. And actually, one of the advocates today told me about this podcast episode of Brene Brown and her Dare to Lead podcast. I guess it's her most recent episode. But it was all about like toxic work cultures, and just some researchers from MIT who had did all this deep dive into all this data about toxic work cultures and how they operate, and just had a really good handle on some of the details of this. But speaking of Brene Brown, I think our culture, she talks a lot about vulnerability as a strength. And I think that to what you were saying before, I think the more we can see vulnerability as a strength instead of a weakness will help us move forward. But also, we have this culture where, or maybe it's human nature, but people feel like we have this victim blaming attitude towards things, because it helps people to feel like it can't happen to them, that we do live in this just world. And if something bad happens to somebody, that means that they had some role in what happened. So it's sort of more like a comforting mechanism for people who, haven't gone through it or don't want to admit that it happens, because, they found a way to maneuver through the system and have it work in their favor, but without necessarily realizing how much of a toll it's taking on them as a bystander, or, there's just toxic cultures are rampant. And for, I think that the more we can recognize it and acknowledge it and speak out when it's safe to do so, not necessarily in our work environments, but in situations like this, or, pushing legislation behind the scenes, or, there are ways to speak up without necessarily putting ourselves in harm's way. So a cultural shift that needs to happen. Basically, there's so many parallels to domestic abuse. It's taking the progress that was made around domestic abuse and moving it towards the workplace, and saying that behaviors in both of these, or abusive behaviors in both of these areas, are wrong, and there need to be consequences for them in order to start preventing them.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's a good correlation. In a lot of these situations, it is an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And as we see in most abusive relationships, once again, it goes back to what you ladies talked about last week. It's about power.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
So I've got a couple more videos here. This one is from Michigan today. It's going to be on the sidebar here. So it's not going to take up the whole screen because, you've got the whole thing with the aspect ratios when it comes off phones and whatnot. But so check this one out, guys.
And quit his job he loved as the dairy manager at Kroger in Milford, Ohio. We take a stand from New York to California, Pennsylvania, Oregon, Wyoming, Colorado, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Arizona, Texas, Florida. All of the people, all the states I mentioned are holding a rally from 12 to 1 today in honor and to bring awareness to Evan Seyfried's horrific, toxic bullying work environment.
And then I've got another one, I believe from Ohio.
Hold Kroger accountable! 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 Hold.
So, and that one is really cool because you can actually see camera crews and people taking a peek at what's going on. And, that kind of awareness goes a long way. And if I'm not mistaken, Ohio is Kroger's corporate office home. So that's even worse that this took place in their backyard. And for a company that, makes as much profit as they do, and they try to talk about their reputation and things like that, this happened in one of their core stores where their home office is at. And that speaks volumes. The silence from them speaks volumes. I know they're in litigation and all this other stuff. I get that. But it's been a year. And right there in their backyard, they allowed this to take place. And it kind of infuriated me. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, Deb, but there was some news, like grocery, whatever, Twitter account posted this video of them talking to Rodney McMullen. Things that other businesses can learn from Kroger. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I retweeted it and quoted, well, the first thing they can learn is they need to learn about Justice for Evan and fill out this survey, because it's like, really? And, I'm sure their social media people don't really pay attention to that, but that just shows you how brash and how non-caring these businesses are to it. Because Kroger's been getting drugged through the mud all year long. They had that survey about, what their employees were making, how many of them were homeless or living paycheck to paycheck, working conditions. You had the strike at King Soopers. They have been drugged through the mud. And I don't understand how the press is like, oh, there's some like shining beacon of the grocery world. No, they are not. And I will go on record as when I lived in Georgia, there were Publix and there was Kroger. And there was no Kroger that ever impressed me. So they didn't get a lot of our business unless we just happened to be nearby.
Yeah. I think you mentioned this before that the media and the what am I trying to say here? The corporate money supporting the media then leads to like either not getting coverage or I'm sure certain spins to like support them. It's just disheartening to see how much corporations run the show.
The money always runs the show. And that's the sad part because there's no doubt in my mind, I'm not some media mastermind, but you cannot tell me that the reason these big networks and 60 Minutes and things like that haven't covered it is because of corporate sponsorship money.
Yeah.
I bet there's I bet these places have like a list of like companies you're not allowed to talk about. Guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. Yeah. It's the whole follow the money thing. Yeah.
And so it's just bad. And, you know, I hate that, you know, this happened to begin with. I mean, we shouldn't even be having these conversations, you know. We shouldn't have to be standing on State House steps, you know, to make people understand that there was a human being involved in this. You know, he should still be walking around. He should have celebrated his last birthday. And the fact that the company turned a blind eye to it, you know, it shows, you know, ethics lines are garbage. Human resources is garbage. I mean, that was something that when we had Dr. Carbo on, that we talked about the fact that it really is to a point now where those functions should be an outside entity that's not attached to the business, you know, fair and impartial, because we all know the game. HR is only there to protect them from litigation and liability. We know that. So the only way you can solve that is by outsourcing that to reputable organizations that has not only the company's best interest in mind, but every single person that punches a clock there's best interest in mind. And I've been to numerous meetings and like manager retreats where they always bring somebody in from HR and they paint this real happy-go-lucky, you know, they give you all these different scenarios to go through. And you've been in the business long enough, you're sitting there listening, you're like, do they really believe what they're saying right now? Because if HR was that valuable, you know, why would there be more steps to get rid of people on paper as a manager than less steps, you know, to keep people? It's not about retaining people. It's about, you know, this person's a problem, get them out the door. And that's why that stuff can't be handled in-house anymore. It just cannot, not effectively anyway. And it's all a dog and pony show.
Yeah, that's what that podcast episode with Brene Brown was all about. Like the reasons that people left during the Great Resignation were like the exact reasons that, or these, you know, it was things like disrespect and abusive management and lack of inclusion. And there were like 5 or 6 things. And they went completely against these like core values that these, I think it was some high percentage of the companies that they looked at. And this was a ton of data that they looked at, which is you know, they say they uphold respect, and like all these core values that they say they uphold are actually like the opposite is rampant through, you know, the vast majority of work cultures. So, it's just a bunch of lip service. It's, you know, treating people like they're not people. It's, you know, they think they used the phrase like attack on personhood in this podcast.
Well, that makes sense.
So yeah. And then ultimately it's the people in power policing themselves. And, you know, even with an outside agency, it's the company paying for that outside agency, but it's certainly worlds better than the HR department, like doing an investigation, which is usually not even an investigation. It's usually talking to the person making the complaint and talking to the person that they're making a complaint about. And like, that's it.
Well, that was a huge failure for Kroger though, because, you know, the complaints that were lodged, I think there was the one employee who filed the complaint. And then after what happened with Evan happened, the employee went back and they said the investigation was finished, and they didn't talk to any of those people involved at all. So how can you investigate something without speaking to somebody? You know,
right?
It's. I mean, part of my language is bullshit, and you know, so like, especially like if you look at the lawsuit, you know, just the things that went on. And, you know, I will never forget getting the email from Erica where she sent me the lawsuit. And she's like, when you read this, you're going to be like, what? And I was, because the people just don't understand. If you haven't read the lawsuit, how far this thing went and how many people had to have been involved. This wasn't just one manager. This was a group of people. And, having worked in that business, if you just read the lawsuit about basically the sabotage of his dairy department, when you've got a group of people actively somewhere housing out-of-date merchandise for when Evan walks away or goes on break or whatnot and goes start shoving out-of-date merch, man, that's like a full-fledged operation. That is not just some random thing. That takes planning. That takes execution.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like just amazing to me. And I thought, sure, bullying, but I'd never seen anything to that extent. And the fact that, he's taking pictures of every 4-foot section in his dairy. And when you find yourself you're having to do that to prove that you're doing your job, and that doesn't raise a red flag for somebody to get involved, that company's just lost. They're just taking that store manager's word for everything. Obviously she targeted him, and they were going to push him out whatever it took. And it's just appalling that, there was a person that was a mastermind behind this and employed other people to do their bidding for them. And I hope those people don't sleep at night. They're complicit. And I'm sure some of them were your typical bully assholes that thought, oh, the objective would be get rid of him. That when it went down the way it did, I'm sure some of them are like, oh, hell, it wasn't supposed to go that way. But guess what? It did. And you guys are the reason why. And that's the bad part about, what happened. Yes, we know Frazee and Pig. We know who they are. All right. But we don't know all the other pieces and parts. We don't know how many people were involved. And it's got to be, from where I sit, maybe 5, maybe more, because it takes, they were wasting company time, company payroll to go set this guy up. They should have cleaned out that entire store after this happened.
Yeah. Yeah. That would require them admitting some kind of fault. But yeah, the amount of yes people that Shannon Frazee had to have, like, that part of the lawsuit where I think it was over the course of just like one day where it was like 8:53, or just like, or whatever, those timestamps. That was pretty mind blowing. The number of people, she had lined up to execute her, her scheme.
Because they sure as hell weren't doing any work.
Yeah. They just blindly, it's the whole like dictatorship, like blind loyalty type thing where, they have their yes people and then they have their people who have integrity. And it just becomes this like battle. And when ultimately you're going up against the people who are above the rules or act above the rules and there's no consequences for them. It's a rigged game. You just can't win against that. And
the one thing about the lawsuit that is really amazing as well is, look, the industry and the media, likes to pick and choose what's the big offensive topic when it comes to workplace harassment. So with sexual harassment being on the forefront of everything for the past 3 to 5 years, the fact that he went, on behalf of those 2 employees, and that investigation didn't go any further than it did, with that being in the public eye, as much as it's been, with, mass media, the whole 9 yards, the fact that Kroger didn't act on that properly tells you all you need to know about them. If they're not going to attack the problem that everybody knows about and hears about ad nauseum, well, God, what else are they going to turn a blind eye to?
Yeah. Then they don't. Yeah. If they don't even have play against, if they don't even adhere to actually illegal activity, then and investigate that, then they're certainly not going to care about things that just require them to have integrity, but not actually, there's no law against abuse of power. So, or like general abuse of power. So there's nothing requiring them to do anything. So yeah, I mean,
do you believe that Frazee is still there just because they're scared to be an admission of guilt if they moved her out?
I think that's why they're keeping her in that position. I think that if they moved her or fired her, that would be some kind of admission of guilt, and they don't want to, they're all they care about is their liability, probably.
Have you heard any updates on the litigation?
I haven't. No, I don't know. I don't know anything on that.
Yeah, I need to get with them because I know that they were waiting on a decision whether or not it could move forward, I guess.
Yeah, that's where
and it should. It damn well should. And if anything comes out of this, I mean, if this is the shot, if this can actually move forward in a legal manner that a big corporation is going to be held accountable, that's going to be industry changing. And it would be sad, it's sad what has happened, but you'd actually be gaining justice for Evan, and his name would be attached to a world-changing event, industry-wide.
It would be incredible to have that, a case in employees' favor. Because as Jana says, who one of the organizers, like, this was entirely preventable. Mm-hmm. They could have. It should not have happened in the first place, but they could have stepped in at so many. The Kroger, the employer, could have stepped in at so many turns, and just like there were so many reports that happened from Evan or people associated with Evan that this is just complete negligence.
Yeah, they didn't even offer to transfer him to another location. You would think at a minimum, just move him out of there.
Yeah, and that would have solved Shannon Frazee's problem because she just wanted her friend to come in and replace Evan. I mean, that would have been a win-win, but at that point she probably, I don't want to speculate about what she was getting out of it, but obviously there was some kind of incentive to keep Evan there and tormenting him. So from her end, yeah.
So Deb, tell us a little bit about what you're also affiliated with.
Yeah. So, I was bullied back in 2007 at a university and went through a whole bunch of things that I've learned now don't work, going to HR or typically don't work. I should say, shouldn't say they never work, but, this was over the course of about a year, and I got involved with legislation at that point. This was, I think I mentioned 2007. So we're talking over 10 years ago. And when I was working on the legislation, we'd have so many people write into us saying, here's what I'm going through. What do I do? How do I navigate this? How do I heal from this? I've been out of my job for X amount of months or even years, and I still feel stuck in this. And so, going along building this base of advocates, I realized the power in connecting them. It's such an isolating thing. So I started what's called Dignity Together. It's online or in live digital courses to help people understand what's sort of the obstacles working against them, the culture, the overall culture, stereotyping people, the work culture, the abuser's view, but then also what is likely to happen if they look at certain options, helping them to stand in their power about making making the decisions that would be best for them. And then also, understanding what is likely to happen in the healing process. And then in doing that, helping people connect with each other and understanding that that's really powerful in helping people with trauma, because this is betrayal trauma. So that's what I do as my work now. It's called Dignity Together. And then also as part of that, this program called Redefine. And it's, virtual summits. We actually have one coming up this weekend. And in-person summits and retreats for the same thing, to help people come together, understand some pieces of what they're going through, to just help people. There's so many aspects to this, of whether it's the legal aspect, the mental health piece of it, all of the stress responses people could have, and then what does moving forward look like? How do you not feel stuck anymore? How do you even go to a job interview? Do you talk about it? All these questions that people have about this issue. So to help them navigate through it, and I help them do that by talking to each other, really. And for a lot of people, it's the first time that they're in a situation where they don't have to justify what happened or explain themselves, or it's the first time where they're among other people who just get it, who they've been through it. It's not these same exact situations, but I think I've said this before, it really operates like a playbook, and they can start to see that and detach from it once they start talking to each other and really understanding kind of some of the formula to it, and how people can tend to behave when they're threatened by somebody for whatever reason. Usually their insecurities get triggered as part of this. But so Dignity Together and Redefine are the two things that I work on.
It's amazing work that everybody's doing. I'm going to be real honest with you. I'm extremely thankful for Erica reaching out to me, because I've met some very intelligent, good people along the way. Yourself, Vicky, Jana, Dr. Carbo. I got to tell you, I really, really enjoy talking with him. And, it's, once again, it's reaffirming, to know that there's good people out there. And, it's a shame that, tragedy brings people together. But at the end of the day, that tragedy groups people together to be louder and have more strength and, try to promote change. And, I appreciate every one of you, everything that you do to promote some sort of positive well-being for, anybody in the workplace. It's important, and we need more people like you guys. I mean, we really, really do. There's so much wrong in, the business industry, period. It's been an eye-opening experience for me, getting out of management and stepping into this journey I've decided to do with the podcast and whatnot, and all the people I've come across and all the stories. And then, you talk about the playbook, and the one thing that, I guess it's the same thing. Everything follows a pattern, and I think with what you're doing, if you're able to empower somebody to understand that pattern and that playbook, you increase their chances of success and survival 100-fold, easy out of the gate. Because, what I've seen, the patterns, the playbooks, really and truly, it's just corporate bullying. It has been from the very beginning. I mean, it's a way to keep somebody under your thumb. It's a way to make them feel less about themselves, to try to get more out of them. It's you guys are the face of kind of like the worker revolution, the mental health revolution. You guys are the ones who are out there creating programs and trying to come up with legislation that are going to help hundreds of thousands of people if we can ever get it done. And y'all all should pat yourselves on the back for that. It's amazing work that all of you do.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that.
Not a problem.
Yeah, and thank you so much for using your voice to shed light on this, because it is it's like this silent epidemic. I mean, it affects so many people, yet, workplace bullying or workplace abuse is not a household term, and it needs to be. We need to be talking about it. We need to be understanding it and understanding the effects that it has on us. I mean, that podcast that I heard today said something like, our bosses can have more influence, something like this, but our bosses can have more influence on our health than our doctors can. And that's I was like, yeah, that's exactly how it works. And, we don't necessarily see that in our everyday lives. So
no, because people don't realize how much time we spend at work. Those people that work around you, you're spending more time with them than you are your families. Okay. So, and people in your inner circle. So just by proxy, the amount of time and exposure you have, they can do far more damage to you than your life outside of work.
Yeah.
Which is awful. And that needs to change. That really, really needs to change. And it's something that I don't know if I'll ever see in my lifetime. I hope I do. I don't think it's fair. I'm not saying that you give the world to anybody just because, they have a beef, but you need to understand that there's still a lot science doesn't know about a human, how our brain works, what triggers certain people certain ways. And you should treat every individual that way. You don't know what little thing you could say, thinking that you're like super boss or something like that pushes them over the edge. And it's just, we just do not view each other, like we should. Too much hate, too much divisiveness. Yeah. Look, what happened to him just because he wore a mask? Yeah. And that's a choice, and it's not hurting a damn soul. And that's the thing. If you're doing something like that and it's causing somebody harm, okay, they can say something. No, it's not hurting a soul. Leave them alone.
Yeah.
And, actually, I've got to message her back. I actually found somebody on Twitter who, through a university, they actually did a study. Like, there's data, showing how workers were faring during the pandemic due to the different protections or lack thereof their companies were giving them. And in perusing this, I've also saw that there was a study done on the mental health aspect of grocery and retail workers during COVID-19, which I want to get a hold of that person too, because anytime we can give somebody just a little bit of time, somebody stumbles across seeing it or whatnot, if they can actually get some data and they can actually, something tangible, it all comes down to the bosses and the public treat essential workers like garbage, both sides, and like in Evan's case, he's not getting support from his superiors. And if he's getting, beat up by, consumers as well, it's a bad thing. So, but we're sitting right at an hour. We're going to go ahead and cut this off. I do want to say thank you to Jana. I want to say thank you to Erica for reaching out to me at the very beginning. This has been one hell of a ride. It's a very sad story. It's something that could have been prevented. My condolences continue to go out to the family. No parent should have to outlive their child, and Kroger should pay for that 110%. It's everything that went on with that situation was wrong from the top down. And McMullen, happened on your watch. Take out your trash. So, next week, I'm not real sure what we're doing. Wednesday, we might be doing the employer violations from the tracker that I found going through. We'll talk about Kroger as well. We'll go through different payroll violations, OSHA violations that are all a matter of public record. It is a sight to see, because it'll break it up by, how many people got cheated in pay, injuries, whole 9 yards. And it's actually quite eye-opening when you go through that stuff. Also too, we'll have our new thing, the retail therapy sessions, coming up soon. Everybody be on the lookout for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And, we're going to keep moving forward. So if anybody has any suggestions or anything, hit me up. If you got somebody that you want to see come on, let me know. We'll do what we can. Debra, you and Vicky, welcome anytime. Absolutely. You got anything to say? Just let me know. So, having said that, everybody, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for everybody who's retweeted anything I've posted about Justice for Evan. Thank you for all of you who believe in the cause. Thank you for all of you that, you know, through me making you aware, maybe you were not, that signed the petition. We still need more signatures. The job ain't done yet. We're a year in. The job's not done until it's done. So once again, thank you for everybody's support. And ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week. Thanks.